Hello there, I'm Jimmy Vegas and this is how to create a Resident Evil style game in Unity, and welcome to episode 13. In this tutorial we are going to start taking a little look, and I mean a little look, at some AI, and that's going to involve making our zombie actually go somewhere rather than just stand still. Don't forget to click on the subscribe button and click on that bell icon as well to stay up to date with every tutorial still to come in this series and everything else on game development on my channel. With that in mind, let's get to work. So AI as a term spans a massive area of game development, and trying to go through everything with AI is going to be a monumental task. So ultimately what we need to do in this instance is we need to focus on what we need from AI at this present moment in time and just work on that until we need to go on to the next bit. So to get our AI going, and we want our zombie to actually do something rather than just stand there, because currently he stands there attacking thin air. So we're going to focus on the movement of our zombie, and if I just go to the scene view, remember that's how we've set our zombie for now, just doing that. So we're going to focus on his movement more than anything else in this tutorial. So firstly, let's actually deal with the correct animation that we need for him, and that's going to be that walking animation. So if we go to our actual folder there, enemies, zombie, and much like we did with the zombie attack, let's go to the walking animation. Hold control, press D to duplicate that and bring it out of there so it's its own game object now. And we need to make sure we tick loop time. Reason being because we want this animation to loop. We want it to constantly do the same thing over and over because that gives the whole walking animation. So going to our zombie now, down here, let's add that animation to him. So if we go to our animator and just drag and drop that walking animation, and let's right click and set as default state. So now when we press play, we should see our zombie doing that walking animation. Yep, that's good enough. So obviously he's not moving anywhere because we still need to code that in. But what that does mean is that we now have two animations that we can work between, much like we have with our main playable character, Jake Bullet. If you guys remember, we named him that. Well, I named him that anyway. So yeah, we can actually use the zombie attack at a later point of our AI system. So the walking one is fine just for now. So how do we get our zombie to walk about and go to different places and do different things? Well, we need to use something called Nav Mesh. And Nav Mesh is, think of it as an AI, it's simplistic walking tool, I guess. So how do we get that? Easy. All we need to do is click Window, go down to AI and click on Navigation. And this will bring up over here, you don't necessarily have to keep it over here next to the inspector panel, but this is our Nav Mesh. Now, how does this work exactly? I'm not going to go into everything on Nav Mesh at this point in time because I don't want to bore you, because realistically, like I said, we just want to get our zombie moving. So we're going to go through the important stuff first, then obviously cover the more advanced and intermediate stuff a little later on. So our zombie can only walk on the floor. We don't want him to walk off into the distance for whatever reason and through walls and everything. So we need to define his walking area. Now to do that, we need to select the floor of where this zombie can walk. So in this instance, we select this part of the floor, this part of the floor, and this part of the floor. So the zombie can walk anywhere here. Obviously, he's not going to be able to walk through this wall because he could still technically walk here, and I'll show you why in just a second, but we can sort that out. So as long as we have the floor selected, we need to click on Navigation Static in the Object section. And what that will do is then give us the option to either say walkable or non-walkable. Jump doesn't really matter at this point. We need to select walkable, head to bake, and then we've got a couple of different options, and essentially the default options are always going to be pretty decent. We don't need to worry too much about the radius because, as it says there, how close to the walls navigation mesh exists. We're going to determine a little bit more with this anyway. So I guess you could increase the radius if you want to, but we might see a little bit of how that works a little later on. Same with the height. The height at this point doesn't matter at all because we don't have any height changes because it is completely flat, this floor. And same with the steps and slope and everything, because we're not doing this on a terrain, we're doing it on a flat surface. That doesn't really matter. So for now, all we need to do is click on bake, and then we'll see some blue appear on our objects. This blue now dictates where our actual enemy can and can't walk. So in this case, it looks like he can walk here, no problem. However, if we go through our wall, he could still technically walk through the wall. So we need to come up with a method of stopping our enemy walking through walls. Now to do that, we need to make sure we select all the walls that he cannot walk through. In this instance, it's mainly going to be this wall and this wall. So make sure you select those walls, head back to object and click on navigation static again. What that means is that that's never going to move. This wall is never going to move, so we don't need to worry about it at all. But we now need to select not walkable. That will basically, when we go back to bake and click on bake, that will basically give a little bit of a section here that says, nope, we cannot walk past this point. There we go. So you can see how that has worked. So our area for our enemy walking, as you can see, is becoming more refined. Now, I would recommend probably doing every wall, but I guess it doesn't matter too much because at the end of the day, he's not going to be able to walk through these walls anyway because there's nothing on the other side. And our player is not likely to be on that other side anyway. So I guess it really is up to you what you want to do with it. But if we look closely, let me turn the processing off, we can see that he can't go past this point anyway. But again, it's up to you. Just make sure that you're comfortable with your area of walkability, if that's even a word. So we can see here, he can walk here, but he can't walk here, so he's not likely to collide with this wall. Now, obviously, we have other objects within our scene, like this, for example. It's the same principle once again. The basics of this, you may come across this, for instance, where it says you can't select anything here. What you'll need to do is go to the object in your inspector panel, and let's go to this one, for example, and then we can set it as navigation static, not walkable, bake, and bake, and it will prevent anything from being able to walk through this object. And it's the same with everything else. You just need to take the time to work out what you need to do here. Do each object, not walkable, click bake, and you can see that it is doing it for each object. So you would just need to go through and do that. I'm not going to waste time and do it now, but that is the basics of how we do it. So let's put our post-processing back on. So let's say we've got everything sorted. We have the walking area all ready for our zombie. How do we get him to walk? Easy. We need to add a Nav Mesh component and then also write a script to be able to control the speed and whatever else we need to do with the zombie himself. So let's head back to the inspector panel. That will obviously get rid of the blue of the Nav Mesh or the navigation. If you need to see that again, you can just click back on there. So let's go to our zombie. And we're not going to attach anything to this zombie itself. What we're actually going to do is make a cube be the zombie rather than the zombie be the zombie, if that makes any sense. So right click on the zombie, 3D object and cube. I'm going to uncouple this cube out of the zombie. And I'm going to resize the cube to be roughly the same height and width and depth as the zombie. It looks like it's going to be about 3 by maybe 6 by 3. So I'm going to pull this to about there. So it looks like it could be about 7. Maybe a little bit more. Oh no, should be all right. So let's pull it to the ground. There we go. And now what I'm going to do is I am going to turn off Mesh Renderer, and then I'm going to drag the zombie inside that cube. Now, why have we done this? Well, we are future-proofing a little bit here because when we get round to shooting our zombie, and we need the bullet to impact the zombie, the cube is a nice, easy method of us being able to easily detect if we're hitting the zombie or not. Now, I know with old Resident Evil games that you could kind of point in the general direction of the enemy and it would hit them, and that is the same style we're going for here. We're trying to faithfully recreate Resident Evil here, and that is basically how we're going to do it. So I'm going to rename the cube to basically say zombie enemy 01. And that is going to be the key to all of this. Our zombie is now encased inside this cube, and this is going to serve many, many purposes. It may seem a little archaic to some people, but for future proofing, this is going to make things a lot easier for us. So what we need to do now is click on Add Component, and we need to type in here NAV, short for Nav Mesh in this case, and we need to go on Nav Mesh Agent. That will add a little collider around our zombie, as we can see, circular in this case. That is basically a way of the zombie being able to detect where and where it cannot go. Now, we're not going to delve too much into this, because ultimately we should be able to, by default, get our zombie walking no problem at all. One thing that we may do is decrease the speed, because I know the speed at 3.5 is rather fast. So I think it's going to be probably roughly about 1, maybe a bit more, a bit less, but we'll see how that goes. We'll keep the agent type as humanoid. Base offset is good enough at 0.5. Acceleration, in fact, I think we'll keep that at 8. Stopping distance, yes, keep that at 0. Obstacle avoidance. Now, this is what we might have to change. The obstacle avoidance will allow us to basically control whether he will impact, for example, this wall here. And we won't actually know whether we need to adjust anything until we see how he gets around this wall. So let's now create the code that allows the Nav Mesh agent to interact with the enemy and make him move. It's a real simple script. Let's go to scripts. And let's right click, create, and folder. Let's create a new folder for enemies. And in here, let's right click, create, and C# script. And we'll call this one Simple Zombie Move. Now, the reason I'm calling it Simple Zombie Move is because we're going to have more complex zombies later on. For example, we have something like Crimson Heads in the Resident Evil remake. We may need a different script for that. Or some kind of boss zombie, you know, something like that. So we're going for simplicity here. Now, we have dealt with a couple of different things within Unity and coding itself. This one's going to be, I say, a little bit different, but not too different. Firstly, we need to add a namespace at the top, because we're dealing with some AI elements. We need to add in using Unity engine.ai semicolon. This will allow us to access the Nav Mesh agent. So I'm going to get rid of the annotations because we do not need those, as always. We do, however, need 2 variables. The first one is going to be a destination point, and the second one is going to be the Nav Mesh agent itself. So when I say destination point, the way this works is there always has to be a destination for the zombie to walk to. And obviously, as we go further into AI, we're able to basically turn that ability on and off. So if the zombie is just stood, you want the zombie to just stand there, he hasn't seen us yet, then we don't need a destination. But when he spots us, we do need a destination because he then needs to move. But for now, all we're going to do is get our zombie to move. So we need to have in public game object, and we'll call it the destination semicolon. Second one, I'm not actually going to have this as public because we're going to define it in the start method because we can. Why, let's do something a little different. So Nav Mesh Agent, and we can call this anything we want. We'll just call it the agent semicolon. And in void start, let's just simply put the agent equals get component, and in spiky brackets, Nav Mesh Agent, open close bracket, semicolon, which then means in the update method, all we need to do is tell it to move towards the destination. So the agent dot set destination, and in brackets, the destination dot transform dot position, close bracket, semicolon, and save. And in its simplest terms, that is as easy as it gets. Just a couple of lines will now make our zombie walk about. So let's give this a try. Let's attach our simple zombie script, if I can get my words out, onto that zombie enemy 01. Remember, this is the cube that we added in earlier in this tutorial. And the only thing we need to do now is set the destination. And the destination is going to be the player. So let's add, if I can find him, the soldier right there. So I'm going to save my project. I'm going to press play and then head back to the scene view. And we should see our zombie walk towards our player without walking into things and walking through things. Press play. And there we go. There is our zombie walking towards us. So let's head out this way. And he's coming after us. He's coming to get us. We should hopefully see him come on to... There he is. Wow, that is creepy. So, it does look like his speed needs to be adjusted a little bit. He is going a bit too slow, so I'm going to increase it to 1.1. What we're going to quickly check out now is I'm going to press play. And we're going to see if our zombie collides with... Let's turn the post-processing off. Collides with anything. So he'll probably collide with this chair because we didn't set that as a collision area. And he is... He's getting very close to the wall, but he's not actually colliding with it. So obviously at the moment he's not going to do anything when he gets right up to us because we haven't coded anything else, but we've got him doing that in its simplest terms. So let's try increasing the radius to 1 on the Nav Mesh Agent. And we can see that really has increased all the way around him. 1 might be a little bit too high, but what I'm also going to do at this point is set this chair as non-walkable. So let's get the chair, navigation static, not walkable, and let's bake that. Just to give us a little bit more leeway so he doesn't walk through the chair like he did just then. So let's press play. And let's take a look at our zombie. So he's definitely avoiding that chair. Well, I'd say he was avoiding the chair, but he's not done a very good job there. Is our zombie... He does look like he collides with it a little bit, doesn't he? So all you would need to really do is just refine things within your game at this point. Looking at the zombie itself, yeah, it's not too bad. However, it wouldn't hurt to play around with the Nav Mesh. So you can see here, if we work around it, we can play around with it, do different things with the mesh itself. I guess it all comes down to, I don't think we need to worry about this too much because once again, this all comes down to, for example, we're not doing terrain here, so we don't need to worry about it too much. But I guess it's probably up to you if you want to play around with this more and more. There are obviously other little tips, well, I'll say tricks, but tips and tricks that you can play around with. For example, if I were to take this here and remove the bake from it, so let's clear that and let's just redo the floor and we'll say that's walkable, bake, and we'll take this wall and we'll say navigation static, click. I forgot to click bake. I should have clicked bake there. So let's select them, click bake, and there we go. So we can see that theoretically he could walk through the wall. So now if I press play, we should see our zombie making a beeline for us once again. So he's being a bit awkward, but he's basically going through the wall here. So we can see that ultimately the way we have this set up is working. It's working with it and refining it a little bit more than what I am doing here, because you realistically need to work with this a lot more than me, because I'm just showing you how to quickly do these things. But you should probably play around with some of these. You don't necessarily have to, but you can see if we change the slope here, what you can do. And obviously changing the radius really makes a difference. You can see what we've done there with the radius is we've really refined where the zombie can and can't walk. So if we press play now, he is really going to avoid a lot of this area. So you can see him walking this way, and he won't get quite so close to that wall. There we go. You can see he's not as close to that wall as he was previously. So I guess there is different methods that you could work with. So I think we had the radius as 0.5. So if I bake that now, we can see just how much it is there. So work with these settings, change the radius if you need to, change the agent radius as well if you need to on the zombie himself. I'm going to put that back as 0.5 because it doesn't matter too much for me, because he just gets around the wall, so that's fine for me. Yes, but you do need to refine it as much as possible. Maybe set the radius as 0.8 maybe, and then bake that just to refine it. And yeah, you've got your zombie walking and going places now. So next tutorial, what we're going to do is we are going to look at bringing in a gun for our player, because obviously we need to get to the point where we can shoot the zombie. I'm also going to look at adding that little sparkle to enemies so we can sit to items to see that there is an item there to pick up. So next time, weapon and a little sparkle. So until that next tutorial, guys, thank you very much for watching.